less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Green. We used to be called the Georgia Liberty Cast, but we recently rebranded and relaunched, and we're now the Free Georgia Podcast. As I said, my name is Jake. I am a filmmaker based just north of Atlanta in a little town called Dunwoody, and I am the owner of Peaceful Sea Productions, which is co-producing this podcast with the Libertarian Party of Georgia, and we're going to be coming at you every week. We might miss an episode here and there, but for the most part, we're coming at you every week, releasing every Tuesday. I have hosted one other podcast in the past. It was called On the Drive Home. It was my wife and I reviewing movies as we drove home from the theater. But the lockdowns back in 2020 basically destroyed any new episodes that we were ever going to have. We tried a couple episodes where it was we watched a new movie in our living room and tried to do it then, but the energy wasn't the same. The title seemed like a lie at that point, so had to cancel that. So the format of this podcast is going to vary from week to week. There'll be a lot of solo episodes of just me talking about local and statewide news, politics, anything that affects your day-to-day life. We're going to do a lot of interviews, a lot of panels, and generally just have a good time and talk liberty and freedom every single week. This is an edited podcast, so it will not be just a stream of consciousness, flow of information the whole time. There will be cuts and edits. Eventually we will do this live, at which point there will not be edits, but until I get a little more proficient at this, we're going to keep this as an edited podcast. We're going to be interviewing candidates. It's a pretty big year for the LP here in Georgia, and we're going to be interviewing candidates who are running for office in statewide elections and also for Congress and Senate. We're also going to talk about national news when it affects Georgia and Georgians in general, which seems to happen quite a lot these days. We'll see how much of the national news that we'll actually cover. You can expect these episodes to be anywhere from about 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on what we're talking about, who's on. There are times when we're going to have 3 or 4 candidates on at a time, so there will be a lot of talking, debate. People need to get their minutes in so that they can promote all the things that they want to promote and all their races that they're running for. This particular episode will be a little bit shorter because today is really all about reintroducing those who have watched the podcast before to libertarian ideas and the basics of what the LP Georgia is all about and what our goals and principles are here in Georgia. I'm also going to be upgrading my studio soon. This studio that you see right here is actually an old dining room. My wife, her desk is right on the other side of this desk, so it gets a little crowded in here. We also have people and dogs and all sorts of stuff running around the house all day, so I'm moving down into the basement within the next month or two, where it will be a much quieter, much more lovely experience for me, and hopefully that will translate to being a better experience for you as well. So today we're going to talk about what it means to be a libertarian, especially here in Georgia. And we're going to go to the LP Georgia website to read it verbatim and then talk about it a little bit. So here we go. So as you can see, this is lpgeorgia.com, where you can get a wealth of information regarding our party and what we stand for, who's in charge of it, who's running for certain offices, all sorts of things. You can also donate up here at clicking this little button. You can also join the LP if that suits you. So if you scroll over here to the party platform, just going to walk you through the preamble. All right. As libertarians, we seek a world of liberty, a world in which all individuals are sovereign over their own lives and are not forced to sacrifice their values for the benefit of others. We believe that respect for individual rights is the essential precondition for a free and prosperous world, that force and fraud must be banished from human relationships, and that only through freedom can peace and prosperity be realized. Consequently, we defend each person's right to engage in any activity that is peaceful and honest, and welcome the diversity that freedom brings. The world we seek to build is one where individuals are free to follow their own dreams in their own ways, without interference from government or any authoritarian power. And then go down to the statement of principles. Again, this is the only episode where I'm ever going to read from our website this amount of text, but I think it's important since we're relaunching. It's been about a year since we put one out, so here is the rest of it. Here's our statement of principles. We, the members of the Libertarian Party of Georgia, defend the rights of the individual. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live in whatever manner they choose. Governments throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. Even within the United States, all political parties other than our own grant to the government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and hold that where government exists, they must not violate the rights of any individual, namely, the right to life. Accordingly, we support the prohibition of the initiation of physical force against others. 2, the right to liberty of speech and action. Accordingly, we oppose all attempts by government to abridge the freedom of speech and press, as well as government censorship in any form. And 3, the right to property. Accordingly, we oppose all government interference with private property, such as confiscation, nationalization, and eminent domain, and support the prohibition of robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation. Since governments, when instituted, must not violate individual rights, we oppose all interference by government in the areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals. People should not be forced to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefits of others. They should be left free by the government to deal with one another as free traders, and the resultant economic system, the only one compatible with the protection of individual rights, is the free market. So there you go. It's a lot of words. Try to sum it up in one little phrase. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. That's kind of been the slogan for the LP for quite a while. It doesn't necessarily encase everything, but it's a really good slogan to start from. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. And that applies very much to the government as well as to individuals. You can also see on our website basically where we land in regards to certain issues and compared to where the Democrats land, where the Republicans land. We agree with both sides on certain things, not as many as they would have you think. We are not in the middle of the Republicans and the Democrats. We are the third leg of the stool. We are not socially liberal and fiscally conservative. We are libertarian. It is not the same thing. So let's go back to the preamble for a second. A world in which all individuals are sovereign over their own lives and are not forced to sacrifice their values for the benefit of others. This is a really good statement. That opening statement is fantastic. And it is really just saying don't use force to It's really just saying don't use force to impose your will upon other people. And that is basically what we're all about. We want people to be able to live their lives the way they want to live it, as long as they are not harming other people in the process. So let's talk about the statement of principles for a minute. There are a few lines in here that I'd like to focus on. One of these is, even within the United States, all political parties other than our own grant to government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. That means the Libertarian Party is the only party in the United States that is advocating for all of your rights, every last one of them, and for the government to stay out of them. We're the only one. We're the only one that believes in personal responsibility and ultimate freedom. Another line. Governments throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. Prisons, taxes, eminent domain, all these things where the government has decided that it is the ultimate authority, that it can dictate how much you have to pay in property taxes each year, how much you have to pay out of your income, which is completely illegal, but it has been accepted because of just little increments along the way. Little increments from the 1800s until now have led to the amount of income tax and property tax that you owe each year. And we're going to go over that too within this podcast. Another one. Since governments, when instituted, must not violate individual rights, we oppose all interference by government in the areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals. This means that if you want to exchange, let's say, your apples for somebody else's cash, or you want to swap your house for someone's car, or any type of consensual trade where the two parties involved both understand what is happening and both agree to what is happening, the state should not be involved. It's that simple. It's really not difficult. The complicated nature of purchasing a home from somebody, of purchasing a car, all of the documents that you have to sign to make it legal that are required by law is overwhelming and muddies up the entire process. It should be as easy as Ron Swanson would say, I have these apples. Would you like to buy my apples? Yes. Done. Not too difficult. People should not be forced to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefits of others. These are talking about things like welfare, Medicare for all, things where you are paying taxes in order to pay for these services that other people will then use. It's saying that what you earn and your time cannot be taken from you and given to somebody else. But it happens all the time, every day in the United States and around the world. People who contribute more to society are punished more. People who add more value to society have more value taken from them. And the Libertarian Party is here to fight against that. The last two words of our statement of principles are free market. Free market capitalism is something that many people will say exists in America right now. It absolutely does not. Capitalism gets blamed for a whole bunch of different things, and the free market seems like some kind of enigma that is not attainable or that doesn't really make any sense or that doesn't have an exact definition. Well, we're going to go over exactly what free markets can provide and exactly why you should want to live in a place where free markets exist and consent between two parties is all that is needed in order to perform a transaction of any kind. So if you're someone whose business got shut down over the last 2 years due to the lockdowns, if you're someone who is now losing all of their savings due to inflation and don't really understand why that's happening, if you're someone who doesn't understand why we are sending people to war, Georgians to war in multiple different countries at this exact moment, then this is the right podcast for you to listen to. And I hope you come back week after week to learn. Learn with me. I'm not going to get everything right all the time. In fact, I'm probably going to get a lot wrong, especially here at the beginning. But I hope you bear with me. If I do get stuff wrong, I will own up to my mistakes and just be as honest as I possibly can be with you. So, as far as the goals of the Libertarian Party of Georgia, it's actually fairly simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. 1, spread libertarianism. Convert people to believing that personal responsibility and freedom are paramount to having a successful and thriving society. 2, get people elected. So whether it's at local levels, town council, county seats, statewide elections, like governor, lieutenant governor, Georgia Congress, Georgia Senate, that kind of stuff, or things like U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate. Get people elected into these positions so that we can start repealing laws and spreading our beliefs, spreading our culture, because that's what will ultimately determine exactly how free you are. So I myself come from a conservative upbringing. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and was a conservative Christian, grew up conservative Christian, went to Savannah College of Art and Design here in Georgia. I went to the Savannah campus and definitely started drifting towards being a Bernie bro, as they're called. Was definitely a supporter of Bernie Sanders in 2016, and quickly, as I got into his economic policies and all of that, realized that that absolutely was not logical, not for me, and I couldn't stay on board with it. So for a while, I was politically homeless, and then in about 2019, I discovered the Mises Caucus, which I quickly joined, followed soon after by the Libertarian Party. So I've been on, I've been all over the spectrum as far as my political beliefs, and I finally found a home with the LP because I believe in ultimate freedom. I believe that people should be free to do what they desire without hindrance from especially the government, but other people as well. I don't ever want to force my will on anybody else, and I expect them to act in the same manner towards me. So that's kind of my background, just to give you a little history of where I'm coming from when I talk about a bunch of the topics that we will be talking about throughout the podcasts. I've been living in Georgia for, I guess since 2017, and then obviously 3 years during college from 20, when was that? Goodness gracious. 2010 to 2013, maybe? I can't remember. That was like 10 years ago. Who knows? Sometime in the 2010s, I lived in Savannah, Georgia, and now I live just north of Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm not perfectly versed on all the issues that are happening throughout Georgia, but I have been paying attention for the last 3 or 4 years to what has been happening in our state, and some of it has been amazing, some of it has been appalling, and I believe that much of it has to change. And I believe that the Libertarian Party is in a fantastic position this year to start making some of those changes and affecting our day-to-day lives and influencing more people than we have over the past 50 years that the Libertarian Party has been in existence. So when I showed my wife the intro to the podcast, her description was, "That's aggressive." And that's kind of what I'm going for. I'm going for aggression with a side of empathy and compassion, because I don't think in a world that is dominated by two major parties where they get 95% of the vote or more in most elections, I don't think that being passive or just being kind or just going with the flow is going to change anybody's minds. And it might change a few, but it's not going to change enough to make a real difference. And I think being aggressive and having aggressive messaging and going for it is how we're going to win people to our sides, because there just weren't enough people addressing lockdowns and gun control and war in any aggressive or forceful way, which is something that I intend to rectify and really go after some of the things that have really affected Georgians in particular, but also pretty much the entire world over the last 3 years. And I'm looking forward to doing it. I haven't hosted a podcast in a long time. It's been, 2.5 years. And I used to be in front of the camera all the time. I used to have a YouTube channel where me and my brother would travel around the world and teach people how to do it on a super tight budget. And used to be in front of the camera all the time. And now I guess it's my time to be back in front of the camera. So here I am, and looking forward to being your host for the foreseeable future. Let's see. So I had mentioned candidates this year. Let's go over some of our candidates that are running for office here in Georgia. We have Ted Metz running for Secretary of State. We have Shane Hazel running for governor, Ryan Graham running for lieutenant governor, and Martin Cowan running for attorney general. Then we've got Mark Mosley for U.S. House District 8, Justin Jones for State House 72, Emily Anderson, State Labor Commissioner, David Radaba, I believe is how you pronounce it, Agriculture Commissioner, Colin McKinney for Public Service Commissioner, District 2, Clinton Cowart for the Georgia House of Representatives, 165, Chase Oliver for U.S. Senate, Angela Pence for U.S. House District 14, and Andrew Underwood for State House 2. And we're going to try to have a bunch of these people on over the coming weeks and months before the elections happen in end of October, beginning of November. Election day this year is actually November 6th, and I believe the polls open 3 weeks prior to that, so something like October 14th, I believe, something like that. And so we're going to try to have all these folks on here to talk about their campaigns, talk about what they believe in, what they're trying to do for their particular areas or for the state in general. And some of them will be on solo, some of them will be on with other folks, and they should be really fun and interesting conversations to have. We're also going to try to have some non-libertarians on the podcast from time to time, preferably in a panel with a new libertarian and a libertarian who's been involved in the party for a long time, just so we can have just so we can imitate a real-life discussion of, libertarians who meet non-libertarians in the real world, which that happens all the time, since there are way more of them than there are of us. Though I truly believe everybody is far more libertarian than they realize. They've just been indoctrinated by the state since they were 6 years old. Next week, we will be talking with Shane Hazel. He's running for governor of Georgia. He's being called the Bitcoin governor. He believes in getting your money out of the state's hands and getting basically privatizing and decentralizing currency. Because when the state controls something, they almost always mess it up. And since it is Bitcoin month, crypto month here at the LP, we had a crypto event last week. We've been sending out email blasts with crypto information in it, Bitcoin information. Since it's that month, I thought it would be a good time to have Shane on, and we're going to primarily focus on Bitcoin and maybe talk about the rest of his campaign as well. So I think that about does it for this first episode. Like I said, it was going to be a shorter one. I am hoping that you enjoyed it and that you will tune in next week as I talk to Shane Hazel. And I hope that it kind of gives you a base point for where this podcast is going to go and all the topics we're going to talk about. If it happens in Georgia and it's affecting people's lives, generally I want to talk about it. I want to give the liberty perspective on it as well. And so if you happen to know of a significant event or something in your town, your city, your county, please reach out to us, podcast@lpgeorgia.com. And for any information or to join the LP or donate, you can always go to lpgeorgia.com. Thanks for listening.